Welcome back. All right, so I did a video right as the season's getting started on potential award winners and made my predictions for who I think is going to win each award. And there was, hey, why isn't the Calder here? This is why the Calder wasn't on there. The Calder Trophy is always one that is most discussed. We're always excited to see new players, and players will get off to good starts, slow starts, doesn't necessarily show you who's going to win the award at the end of the season, right? There are those guys who will come out of nowhere to end up winning it. I'm going to do a video on Calder winners at some point soon because it is an interesting award to me as well, but for different reasons. Because I think that there are players that get overhyped based on their first season. I think there are players who are overly criticized their first season because the expectation is always if a guy comes into the league and scores 45 points as a rookie, well, who knows what he'll do after that? When the reality is, sometimes that 45-point rookie is a 45-point player. Sometimes that 20-point rookie is going to be a point per game player later in their career. So on the board, I've put up guys who are being talked about or who I think are worthy of maybe being discussed in this video, but there are going to be others that emerge during the season, obviously. Going in alphabetical order, and it's not nearly as egregious to get through as normal because a lot of teams don't have a rookie that's prominent right now. Mason McTavish for Anaheim is an excellent contender for Calder. He has definitely spent his time getting prepared, getting ready, and he looks really good to start the season. So McTavish may very well be a guy to watch. Now for Arizona, you've got Dylan Guenther, who makes his debut last night, gets an assist. And yeah, Guenther has the goal scoring acumen, at least he has before reaching the NHL. And Arizona, what do you know? They need goals. So it is possible that Guenther finds his way onto some special teams, maybe puts up some points, gets into that conversation for the Calder. Then with Buffalo, you've got three guys. And J.J. Peterka has been impressive through the first two games. Jack Quinn, to me, has been a little bit quieter than Peterka, but again, that's just my opinion on that. And Owen Power, of course, is one of those who is a favorite. Owen Power, an excellent defenseman who I think is going to give Darlene that little bit of a boost. It's one thing to be like the best defenseman, but to have two who are really good. I think Power's going to help Darlene's game. Darlene looks good to start the season as well. And yeah, Owen Power is one of the favorites. Then you get down to Columbus, because Calgary, Carolina, Chicago, Colorado, I went through their rosters. And I didn't see anybody who's like a clear contender for the Calder. With Columbus, there's two. There's an interesting one in Kent Johnson who's been called up, right, with the Laine injury. Didn't look out of place in their game last night. And Kirill Marchenko, who before the season started, when I did the preview on Columbus, there was a lot of, hey, you're not talking enough about Marchenko. And the reason that I wasn't talking a lot about Marchenko is because when a player comes over from the KHL, from Europe, you just never really know how long it's going to take for them to make that transition. Now, he's playing at the AHL level, but his numbers, 4 points in 2 games, tell you he may not be down there for very long, especially given the start Columbus is off to at 0-3. Or maybe Marchenko's more likely to stay down if the team has a bad record, right? There you go. Then with Dallas, you have Wyatt Johnston, who's off to a good start. Looks to be a really good pick for Dallas. Good scoring depth. He's already got a goal, so we'll see if Johnston can score a goal every other game. And if he keeps doing that, he'll get into the Calder conversation. With Detroit, there's two really prominent ones here, but Soderblom has become really quite the story in Detroit, only 2 games into the season. But that Redwoods line, that's an impressive line. And then you've got Simon Edvinsson on the blue line, who has looked good as well. So between Soderblom and Edvinsson, they're going to get some votes, I would think, if they can keep this up. It's a long season, right? But again, with rookies, we get really fixated on them and how well they're playing. Now you get to Edmonton, you get Dylan Holloway, doesn't have a point yet in 2 games. And as soon as a player starts to, struggle offensively, so if Holloway goes another 2 or 3 games without a point, that's when we'll start to hear the conversation about does he get the 9 games and get sent down, or do they just keep him? And even if he's struggling, does he stay in the lineup? They need Holloway. I will say that of the Oilers, who are 1-1 to start the season. I think if Holloway can provide them with some really good scoring from the wing, I think that'd be huge for them. I didn't see anybody on Florida's roster that stood out, so Brant Clark is the one from LA. Clark making the team was a surprise, and yet He's definitely got, I wouldn't say underdog because of where he was drafted, but I definitely think there are people rooting for him to have a good year. So far, the Kings, it's been a mixed bag for the Kings thus far. But yeah, Brant Clark could very well play a prominent role there at some point this season. Now, one of the favorites has to be Marco Rossi from Minnesota, right? With Minnesota, a lot of scoring. Rossi not as prominent with that as Boldy is. Matthew Boldy's just a special talent out of Minnesota who, if he'd played the full season last year, may very well have snagged the Calder himself. But yeah, Rossi, definitely one of those dark horse candidates, as is Uri Slafkovsky for Montreal. Montreal now with the 1-2 start, so they won their first game, lost the next two. And I don't think we've seen Slafkovsky playing as well as we know that he can. And it again, that's where it can take a while for players coming over, playing in the NHL, not just jumping up from juniors, but guys coming over from Europe, where it's kind of both. You're playing against tougher competition, and it's on a smaller ice surface. So it can be a real learning curve. So with Slafkovsky, we'll see if he spends the whole season with Montreal. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets demoted at all. And then I won't be surprised when people say, see, he's a bust, even though he's 18, right? So you can't be a bust at 18. I mean, you can try, but I don't think it's possible. With New Jersey, Alexander Holtz, who already has a goal. So getting an early goal is good for Holtz, good for his confidence. He looked good last year, just could not get that puck in the net during his call-up with the New Jersey Devils. So he had a good year in Utica. And now he's back, and it looks like Holtz might be in the lineup to stay. New Jersey's been a disappointment through 2 games. The Fire Lindy chants were very loud, yes. And I'm just going to throw this in here. I got a set of stickers that I ordered, just one of those generic 50 sticker packs that you can get off Amazon. And the New Jersey one says, "This team makes me drink." Now, I've never made it into a magnet, but with the start of the season New Jersey's off to, I'm thinking, that might be a good magnet to use in a news video because if you're a Devils fan, yeah, it's been a rough start to the season. Then we get down to Ottawa, where you got Jake Sanderson. He's got a point already. Sanderson is going to play a lot. He's going to play on a team where there's some pressure. I don't know how much the pressure is going to build if Ottawa continues this slow start they're off to. They're 0-2 to start the year. And whether or not that affects Jake Sanderson's spot in the lineup. Again, if your team is off to a rough start, you may look and say, you know what? If we put this guy in the minors, we maintain control over their contract later. So the years to unrestricted free agency and all that fun stuff. So for Jake Sanderson, we'll see if he stays the whole year. I think he does. I'm just throwing that out there just in case. But yeah, I think he stays with the team the full season, and I hope he does. Jake Neighbors had quite the debut for St. Louis last night. Neighbors turned some heads last preseason as well, so it's nice to see him in the lineup and nice to see him get a goal. Now, Neighbors, when he was drafted, was seen as a very good two-way forward. Not really seen as being a top-notch scorer necessarily at the NHL level. But, of course, scouts can be wrong. We know this because they're scouting 16, 17-year-olds. Of course, they're going to progress at different rates, and some of them are going to turn out, some of them aren't. But for Neighbors, it is possible he becomes one of those guys who has the really good rookie season and maybe has increased expectation. As I mentioned at the start of the video, sometimes you have a 45-point player in a rookie year, and that's what you have going forward. And there's nothing wrong with that. Definitely in the NHL, 45, 50-point players are key guys, and you like to have them in your lineup. They just don't necessarily translate as superstars. Although if the rest of their game is like Tanner Jeannot level, then you might be seen as kind of a bit of a star there. Seattle's got 2, although Shane Wright's only played the 1 game so far this year. Matty Beniers, 4 points in 3 games. And Beniers, to me, is the favorite. So I've reached Beniers, and I'm going to go ahead and put the asterisk next to Matty Beniers because I think he ends up being the guy who wins the Calder. And just for the record, I'd have McTavish as a finalist. The other finalist, yeah, I'll go with Rossi. I'll say those are your top 3. And I know I'm not done the list yet, but I reached Beniers, and to me, he's going to be the Rookie of the Year. Seattle's a second-year team. They need scoring. Beniers has that in bunches. San Jose, William Eklund, who's currently in the minors, still may end up getting called up, especially with them off to an 0-4 start. If they need an injection of talent and skill, it's possible they bring up Eklund. It is also possible Mike Greer looks at what's going on the ice and says, this is a disaster. I don't want the kids near it. and leaves Eklund, and the other notable would be Bordelot, leaves them in the AHL so they can get experience with the Barracuda and come up next year. So and again, that can be a good idea. Down with Toronto, Nick Robertson still qualifies as a rookie. Nick Robertson, if he gets that opportunity with Matt Murray currently being injured, could surprise some people and could get into that conversation himself. He needs to make it so Toronto can't send him back down. So he needs to make it so if he plays 8 or 9 games that he gets 7 or 8 points or more, and makes it so Toronto can't cut him. They have to get rid of somebody else. You basically, with Kyle Dubas, it seems to be the case that you have to force your way into the conversation and make sure that he can't get rid of you. So yeah, we'll see if Robertson can do that. Vancouver, Andrei Kuzmenko has looked good. Older than most of the other rookies on this board. I'd say he might be the oldest on the board, of course. And it's 1 year, and then he's a UFA. So Kuzmenko, there's some pressure on him to perform if he wants that big contract extension next year. And so Kuzmenko may very well score. I would say 20 goals is possible, if not probable. But it's going to depend on where he is in the lineup. We've seen Boudreau before busting guys down the lineup, moving guys up. And since it's Kuzmenko's first year, the Canucks are off to a rough start. We'll see what his position is on the team. Logan Thompson, goaltender for Vegas. Don't rule out Thompson either. So while I've already unveiled my hand of my picks of Beniers, Rossi, McTavish is probably the top 3 rookies this year. Logan Thompson could get into that conversation as well if he does end up being the starter for Vegas throughout the year. And if he wins 30-plus games, which is reachable. I would say with Vegas, that is reachable, 30-plus wins. And so Logan Thompson might be in the mix in terms of a Calder winner, being a goaltender. It does happen. So, yeah, Thompson might be a dark horse. And then when you get down to Winnipeg, you got Cole Perfetti, who did not look out of place last year for Winnipeg. Got those games in, still a rookie this year. That can be an advantage. I think it's an advantage for Beniers that he played last year. I think it's an advantage for McTavish that he had previous experience with the Ducks. I think it makes them less apprehensive, more comfortable, and you don't have to worry as much about how long it's going to take for them to really get things going. But there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. And hey, you guys want to mention a rookie that's not on the board? Go for it. It is still very, very early in the season. Who do you think ends up being the top rookie in this year's rookie class? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.